It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rise up, Red Sea. It's the Locked On Cardinals podcast. Brack, Alex Clancy. We're joined every Friday by Johnny Venerable. Man, it's the first day that the Arizona Cardinals are going to allow patrons into State Farm Stadium to watch practice today. It's going on as we record this podcast. Already some news coming out of Glendale surrounding the Arizona Cardinals. Good news. Good news after the reports from yesterday. This episode brought to you by Peacock and Williamson. Let's just keep it short here. NFL analyst Brian Peacock, former NFL scout Matt Williamson. They host Locked On's Peacock and Williamson Monday through Friday. They're covering all the biggest stories in the NFL, getting you ready for the 2021 NFL season. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Alex, Johnny, a lot to get into today. Let's start off this. The Madden ratings have been coming out each and every day. It's been very kind to the Arizona Cardinals. They had two players, their pass rushing tandem or duo of Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt were in the top 10. Both 94s. Nook Hopkins was the second overall rated wide receiver at 98, just behind Devontae Adams. And then you had Budda Baker, the second rated safety of the entire NFL as far as Madden ratings are going. And then they have the quarterbacks. They drop the bomb on us, and they ruin and sour our entire week. The top 10 quarterbacks, can't find Kyler Murray in there. Look, just looking at it, as far as the ratings are concerned, Matt Ryan's the lowest rated quarterback in the top 10, 85 overall. That means Kyler Murray's either going to be an 85 or lower, and he's certainly not in the top 10. Anybody? I mean, I know we can only take this with a grain of salt, but it's still pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, first thing is we said this yesterday. I was like, he's going to be an 82 or an 83, and the two main reasons are one, he's small, and people think that that's a thing where he's going to get hurt, and then it's going to drop the rating if he gets hit. And number two, it's the intermediate passing, things that people have constantly been saying, and I think, as we've mentioned, it's more about scheme and talent. In the intermediate passing range than more about Kyler Murray actually being a quarterback. And this is right. And it's going to go up. Madden does the ratings go up and down throughout the year, right? That's been a thing for a while. So in 83 is an up. It's not like he's going to be a 72. It's going to be an 83. And, he's not Lamar Jackson, so he's not going to be a 99 because everybody loves Lamar Jackson, even though he can't throw the ball. But this is what we're seeing. And unfortunately, it's just a stark reminder of how top heavy this roster is. And them finishing 8-8 last year is just another gut punch. Like, look at how many high rated players they have. Take away, obviously, J.J. Watt. How did they only finish 8-8 last year? It's just a reminder for me, kind of a sour one.
Yeah, the Madden ratings it's a little bit of a boys club where you have to kind of be initiated over time. It's very much, in my opinion, your resume over the course of, a 3 to 4 year run of success. Matt Ryan's kind of grandfathered in at 85. Wasn't Kyler an 82 or an 83 last year entering the season? Maybe an 81.
77.
Oh, man. So they've had
he was
continued disrespect for him. I would think, though, that his attributes play well in Madden and would have an uptick in his skill set, meaning if he's not the fastest straight line quarterback in the NFL, he's definitely in the top 3 to 5. He's got a top 10 arm. He's accurate. It's not like his accuracy is sub 60. So I don't really understand the rankings so much so because you've got somebody like Matt Ryan who at this point he can't move. His arm is not comparable to Kyler's. I think to your point, it would only be the intermediate passing game that he supersedes Kyler on. Matt Ryan turns the ball way more over now than Kyler Murray does. And then you've got somebody like Ryan Tannehill who's had some moderate success, but I think Kyler's best seasons are very comparable to what Ryan Tannehill has done in a very much run-heavy offense. I agree with the top 8 quarterbacks that are ahead of Kyler because Kyler is always going to be right now in that 8 to 12 range. And typically Dak is not included in that group because he was hurt. He's back now. Dak, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, and then, of course, the big four with Russ, Aaron, Tom, and Mahomes. That group, I think, has earned that right. And then you've got a mix of about 4 to 6 guys who comprised, spots 9 through 12. And Kyler's in that group. And that's a good place to be. That's still typically top third in the NFL. And so, I'm anxious to see if he's, just outside the top 10 or if the disrespect continues. But I saw this and was not surprised.
Yeah, 77 last year. DJ Humphrey's probably the most disrespectful rating last year, 73. I don't know. I don't know if they added ratings to help a guy like an old man like Matt Ryan, like handing out Werther's candies or something. Like he's probably got a high rating as far as that, or driving slow in the left lane. I don't know how he's blowing 28-3 leads. He could excel in those departments for the Madden football game, but not. I mean, Kyler Murray, as you said, he's got the skill set that you would want to play in that game. He's kind of like, outside of Lamar Jackson, your best Michael Vick comp in this year's game. I mean, he's got the speed, he's got the arm strength, he can do everything you want.
I mean, yeah, it's easy to knock Kyler because they haven't won anything, and because
but that shouldn't be in the Madden ratings. That's what I don't understand.
But it's the Cardinals, man. If he was on, it's different. But like he's not a star yet.
I mean, the Falcons. I disagree with that. I just don't think people are paying close enough attention. Maybe that's the Cardinals. Maybe that's because the Cardinals have this stigma around them. I don't know. Maybe it's because they've been irrelevant as far as contending teams since 2016, I guess we'll be kind there, because 2017 was a disaster and 2018 was a bigger disaster. So I don't know. We'll look into it. I mean, it's actually, we're not going to look any further into it. That we're done with it at this point. I mean, it's Madden ratings or Madden ratings, and usually those are for kids 18, 20 years younger than I am. It's Bo Brock, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, Johnny Venerable, Revenge of the Birds. We have some interesting thoughts coming up about the players that are on the COVID list for the Arizona Cardinals, and there are a couple that can't stand to miss any time. Now, I know there's nothing they can do about it, but you've got 3/5 of their starting offensive line on that list, and I'm not concerned about those guys: Rodney Hudson, Justin Pugh, and Kelvin Beachum. Those are actually the 3 guys that you should feel pretty comfortable with moving forward. But there are a couple of guys that are in danger of potentially not making this roster if they miss time and if they don't perform this preseason. We'll tell you who those guys are. Plus, we'll continue some conversations about some of the storylines that Alex and I have been covering all week long. It's right here. It's Locked On Cardinals. Thank you for tuning in on our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the like, subscribe. We appreciate everybody that's been tuning in. Comments, we're replying to all the comments. We've been posting these YouTube episodes at noon every day, and we're loving the action that we're seeing each and every episode. Big time thank you to everybody tuning in and participating. All right, let's get into the conversation about who can't stand to miss any time right after this. Let me tell you this, though. Built Bar. Did you see that the track and field event started last night during the Olympics? And Built Bar is the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. It's incredible because these guys and women, they can't stand to put something that's going to bog them down on the racetrack. Of course, they're not even going to want to cut any corners as far as taste. And you don't with Built Bar. It's the most delicious tasting protein bar on the market. It's incredible. Coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry and orange. They're limited time flavors for the summer, and they're fantastic. Find out what flavor you like the best. And then also realize you're not cutting any corners nutrition-wise. 17 to 18 grams of protein, and also calories just ranging from 130 to 180. 4 to 5 grams of sugar, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Go right now. Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll save 15% off your next order. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com or Built.com. Did anybody see the video yesterday? Nook Hopkins hanging out with Chandler Jones. They're just, I don't know what, they were just hanging out in a social setting. And Nook Hopkins brought up a question on his TikTok, or somebody saying Chandler Jones was traded to Miami, and then they had a little fun with it. Chandler Jones said, "That's news to me."
I did see that. It was pretty funny. You know, Chandler's got the kind of laid back sense of humor that, again, I think he is very much at peace now with what's going on. He knows he's going to play this season. He knows he's going to get paid $15 million. And if he plays well, whether it be for the Cardinals, whether it be for Miami, whomever, he's going to get paid handsomely in the offseason. And thankfully for Chandler, he plays a position in which outside linebacker, pass rusher guys can get second and third contracts into their 30s and be paid well. So I thought it was much to do about nothing, but I also think it shows the camaraderie that the Cardinals have and how important Chandler is.
I think what's also important is just seeing the videos of how he's here to play. He's all business.
Right.
Like he doesn't seem to be taking any reps off in practice. Everything I've seen, Chandler Jones looks like he's shown up and he's ready to go. And it's a completely different, like polar opposite approach than Xavier Howard. And it's different because you're right. In the offseason in 2022, Chandler Jones is going to be able to negotiate a new deal for himself, regardless if it's an extension with the Arizona Cardinals or if it's with another team.
Yeah, and I mean he saw the cautionary tale last year with Patrick Peterson. Nothing's expected, nothing's going to be given to him. This is where the business comes into play. You perform well, you can stay and retire a Cardinal. You don't, they're not going to re-sign you. And Patrick Peterson, have we heard from him recently? I don't even know how he's feeling about the whole thing. But Chandler Jones's demeanor is obviously a stark contrast to Patrick Peterson. The cornerbacks are the divas of the defense, and Patrick Peterson showed that very much so over the last week. I feel like Chandler Jones is going to play well. He's going to get double-digit sacks, and he's going to retire a Cardinal. You just figure at that point that that's what's in the tea leaves if he plays even above average this year. He doesn't have to be at a Pro Bowl level to be retained by the Cardinals.
Look at Pat Pete. I mean, he didn't play very well last year, and he got $10 million. Last report I heard on Patrick Peterson is he was repeatedly calling Steve Keim's home and hanging up. I think that's what he was doing the last couple of days. I want to get into two players that are on the COVID protocol list right now that can't miss any time. But I saw this the other night. This was after Aaron Rodgers held his press conference, and he pretty much just scorched the earth as far as the ground that the Green Bay Packers execs stand on. But Kyler Murray put this up on his own Instagram. Do we have any concern about Kyler kind of rooting for Aaron Rodgers on the heels of his comments earlier this week?
I mean, here's the thing. We don't know anything about Kyler Murray. We know that he's a very quiet dude regarding, he's smart, obviously. He's poignant when he posts things about specific things, but he's still kind of an enigma, and he still hasn't done anything yet. So it's not like with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. I think he came in once when Brett Favre got hurt and almost led the Packers on a game-winning drive. Right? They lost, but was it Minnesota? I can't remember. It was good. It was a crazy game because we didn't really know about Aaron Rodgers. And then he won a Super Bowl early, and he's had that clout, up until now. But Kyler's got to prove something before he starts playing hardball, in my opinion, at least. So I don't read anything into that. But let's be clear about one thing. Kyler, we love you. We think you're going to be great, but you got to put up W's before you can play any sort of hardball.
I disagree. I think Kyler thinks that probably the number one thing that's held this organization back from winning is a combination of personnel and coaching. I think that to his credit, he's come in, he's played all 32 games. He's put up Pro Bowl numbers. He's kept his team in it in a lot of instances. He hasn't been perfect. And I think he's got probably people in his ear telling him, that organization historically has not done a lot of winning. And I put a tweet out the other day, and the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced of this. Kyler Murray is the second most powerful person in the Cardinal organization behind Michael Bidwell. And I think that the tweet or the Instagram post, the story kind of encompasses that. But for people that are fretting of Kyler Murray leaving or be disgruntled with the Cardinals, number one, winning cures everything. If they get to the postseason this year, a lot of this is going to be, downplayed in the coming off seasons. But what I will say is, the Cardinals can't love all the baseball stuff. The fan base doesn't like it. and yet he continues to kind of play up the fact that he'd like to do both sports. And he's so nonchalant about being a full-time committed football player 365 days a year. And then you combine that with the fact that it's clear, I think this message was a message to the organization like, I want say on personnel, I want say on decision-making. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think Michael Bidwell gives him that. I think if they make wholesale changes this offseason, I think Kyler Murray is involved in the coaching search. I think he's involved to some degree with free agency moving forward. And I think until Michael Bidwell gets Kyler Murray to commit to a mega contract, because Kyler clearly knows and understands he has leverage outside of this franchise, they're going to be at his mercy. And again, they're in a very precarious position, that being Kyler's camp, that Kyler's putting up numbers. He's succeeding. He's popular, right? He's the face of this franchise in 2 years, Pro Bowl, Rookie of the Year, all that. If he puts up another mega statistical season and they don't make the postseason, which is possible. Look at what Deshaun Watson did for Houston last year, put up big-time franchise numbers. They won like 4 games last year. You're telling me Deshaun Watson's not a winner? Sometimes, the competition's too steep. This NFC West, the margins are so razor thin to win on Sundays, and that typically ends up with who's coaching on the sideline and who's calling the shots in the front office, making the key moves during the season. So this franchise has yet to prove to Kyler Murray, this is just my opinion, that they are a sustainable franchise where winning is expected every year. And that's not good enough for him.
Well, let me point this out. If there is wholesale changes, that means that this season goes pretty poorly for everybody. I mean, if they're going to move off of both Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, that probably means they didn't do very well. And that means that Kyler Murray didn't do enough to merit making these decisions. He's going to be 24 next week, or in a couple days, we'll say. Okay, August 7th. He turns 24 years old. Deshaun Watson, I mean, his big problem was that the organization wasn't tapping him for decisions. Aaron Rodgers isn't getting tapped into for the big decisions that the Packers are making. He's won plenty of games. He's even got a Lombardi trophy. I think it's a very dangerous ground to walk on if you start to give that type of power to your 24-year-old quarterback who has won in 2 seasons. And it's, look, he took the organization out of doldrums of a 3-win season to 5-8. He's won 13 games, but that's not enough to merit giving him the keys to the franchise. I mean, I just think it's very concerning to see him kind of take note of Aaron Rodgers at his stage in the career, in his career, and want this power. It's not the same for Kyler Murray. He's got to earn that. He's got to earn that power.
Yeah.
Real quick,
listen. Okay, go ahead.
When you talk about the 2 franchises that are being compared right now, though, the great Green Bay Packers were with Titletown USA, historic franchise, NFL royalty, where they feel like no one player can dictate terms, and the low self-esteem never won anything Arizona Cardinals, right? I think that's the difference here.
I don't with like, do you know how many quarterbacks would love to have the roster Kyler has right now? Like, let's not get it twisted here. The Cardinals haven't been a winning franchise from their starting point up till now. They've had may have the most losses in NFL history from their inception. But how many quarterbacks would love to have what roster the Cardinals have now? The defense, the offense. It doesn't matter about the coaching and GM. There's over the course of time. I mean, of course it matters, but over the course of time, you know how many bad GMs have won Super Bowls because their talent took over? How many coaches have won Super Bowls? Ask Barry Switzer how that went for him when he was in
Alex, is that Alex or Steve Keim talking to me right now?
Listen, you look at that roster, and if you make excuses for Kyler Murray because of the Cardinals' history, that's giving him an out. You have to prove it in this league, regardless of the ecosystem that you were drafted into. How many quarterbacks, honestly, even quarterbacks on winning teams, would swap rosters to play with the Cardinals right now? Kyler's got to prove it.
I think Russell Wilson didn't even get that power. I don't know. Maybe, do the Cardinals become the first team to really empower their quarterback at that stage in their career? I don't think that's a successful. Did he go for business?
Did he go to school for business? Did he go to school for player personnel for analysis on scouting? No, he went because he's a good football player.
Right. Well, I understand that. It's just interesting. It was a cryptic kind of him sharing it. I just thought it was interesting that he shared it. We're not saying anything one way or the other as far as Kyler Murray. Let's enjoy K1 being the Cardinals franchise quarterback. It's interesting that, a guy who's usually pretty mum on most topics chose that for his Instagram story. I don't know. Certainly, I think it was a little bit of strategy on his behalf. All right, we'll finally get into this. There were 9 players from the Arizona Cardinals in COVID protocol, and there are a couple players that can't stand to miss any time. We'll tell you who they are, plus an interesting tidbit from Johnny, kind of on what we're going to tell you. It's all coming up. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, wrapping up Friday edition, Locked On Cardinals, first week of the Arizona Cardinals practicing in training camp out there, Cards Camp in Glendale. Oh man, it's been awesome. You had the Nook story last week. You had the Chandler Jones story this Monday. You had J.J. Watt, the issue with the sore hamstring. Good news today, Nook Hopkins, who is out with a minor thing? Was that the way that they described it? He's back at practice catching footballs like he's known to do. We have 9 players for the Arizona Cardinals in the COVID protocol. 3/5 of their starting offensive line: Rodney Hudson, Justin Pugh, Kelvin Beachum. And then you have a pair of wide receivers who I think this is huge for these two guys as they enter their 3rd season, Keyshawn Johnson and Andy Isabella. I just don't think they can stand to miss any time. At this, I know their hands are tied. They can't do anything about this protocol, and it's important for them to get back. But once they get back, I mean, it's game time for those two players in order to just make this roster for the 2021 season.
I mean, it's unfortunate that we're looking at a 6th-round pick and saying, let's hope he pulls through, with Keyshawn Johnson.
We've seen him play at a high enough level to think that he can contribute on a week-by-week basis.
I mean, a lot of that was in 2019, though, right? Like, he had a couple opportune catches later in the season last year. I remember an important one around the goal line. I can't remember exactly what game it was. But yeah, Andy Isabella, I can't help but think, if he was in a different system, would he be performing? Or is this just an Andy Isabella problem? And I don't know. He really
I do. He's not that good.
Okay, let me ask you this. If he were given, so I have this theory, and it really sticks with basketball more so, but guys that play in college and they're the star of the team, and then they're asked to come off the bench in the NBA, and it never really translates because it's difficult to go from being the star to have to warm up, sit down for 20 minutes, and then go in and perform right away. Do you think that there's a path to, if Andy Isabella was getting more run early to start games, being on the field a lot more in 4 wide out packages, that he'd be able to perform more instead of getting cold on the sidelines and being asked to be the fastest guy in the arena or fastest guy in the stadium? Or is that scrapping it?
The last game that he played before he went on his inactive streak at the end of the season, he got 85% of the snaps. He got plenty of opportunities to play. He got plenty of opportunities to go out there and get open. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think you're just overthinking it. This is a kid who went to UMass, and yeah, he put up historic numbers at UMass, but that's not big boy college football. And that DK Metcalf Isabella deal is going to haunt them for the next half decade plus, if it hasn't already. And they've used a 2nd-round pick on a wide receiver every year dating back to 2017 when they took Christian Kirk. So what I can tell you, or I think that 2018, when they took Christian Kirk. So what I would say to that is, specifically with Keyshawn Johnson, I think they did him a disservice last year. I think there was pressure to put Isabella higher on the depth chart because of his draft status and the fact that he flashed at times during his rookie year. But Keyshawn is more of that consistent 5th or 6th receiver that you can plug in, can make a couple nice 3rd down catches, play special teams right, 6th-round pick, and then had a really good rapport with Kyler, I thought, as rookies. And I thought he was going to take a step last year. What I can see visualizing happening here moving forward is I think Andy's time with the team is coming to an end, especially if Rondale Moore comes in and takes that job and runs with it and just makes Isabella just a complete afterthought. Because essentially they're going to fill that same role of what Isabella was supposed to be. But Rondale Moore is just a much superior college prospect. If he can come in and run away with that job, there's really no reason to have Isabella on the roster. And what I'll say is they're going to carry, you would think, 6 wide receivers. Okay, so that would assume that you've got your 2 outside receivers in Hopkins and Green. Kirk settled in on the slot. Rondell Moore is your 4th receiver by default. And then it gets interesting, especially if you bring back one Larry Fitzgerald and he comes back and takes the mentor 5th receiver option. Then you really need that 6th receiver to be a special teams kind of standout player that you're not afraid to put in games and be a complete liability a la Isabella. So I would think Keyshawn has a much better chance right now, even with the COVID situation. And I could be wrong. There could be an undrafted player that steps up and looks good. I'm just going off of the two's pedigree side by side, Keyshawn and Isabella, dating back to when they were drafted in 2019. I just think that, to me, what does Isabella do well? I don't think you can say anything, right? And the fact that, Bo's point, being inactive when they were desperate for receivers at the end of the season, they view him as a liability. I think that there still is an opportunity that he will be dealt for a late round pick this preseason when guys are going down and somebody across the league needs a body, right? And it's going to take a flyer on him, like we just saw with what the Bears did with Anthony Miller, right? What we saw with the Niners with Dante Pettis last year. The time is coming for Isabella. I think that if they would have been smart in the offseason, they would have packaged him already. Maybe you could have gotten Gruden to take him, as a flyer for Rodney Hudson. I thought your best route to offload Isabella would be to package him with another player and a pick so it doesn't look quite as lopsided. But at this point, I think you just got to cut your losses.
Sounds like so you're going Talladega Nights, like Ricky Bobby leaving the ticket for his dad. Is that what our Larry Fitzgerald game plan? We're just going to leave a ticket for him, and if he takes it, that's his roster spot. It'd be I don't see Larry Fitzgerald coming to be the 5th option and not getting paid $10 million. I just don't see it.
John Gamadaro said that he thinks it will be minimal with incentives. And if I'm Larry, again, if I get the benefit of skipping majority of the offseason, if not everything in the offseason, and the majority of camp, and I can slide in and still be active on the roster and get to play with these guys and have an opportunity to maybe make the postseason, I mean, he would have, if he would have definitively wanted to retire, he's not going to retire weeks before the season. I think the only way that happens is if he comes to camp and he clearly has lost a step and he feels like I'm doing the Cardinals a disservice, then he retires. I think he's coming back. I think it's only a matter of time now.
I mean, if he gets $2.5 million, $3 million, I mean, he still adds to his, non-quarterback NFL history making amount of money that he's made. He's going to have made under like close to $185 million in his career. I mean, he's not going to be able to find the job where he's going to be able to make $2.5-3 million.
At this point in the offseason.
No, I mean, even if he works as an analyst somewhere, it's not that lucrative. So it's, as far as a guy who loves to make money and is a businessman, his best way to make that type of cash is to play. And there's going to be an interesting opportunity for him, I'm sure. But, even if it's at the end of training camp and right before the regular season, they could get him in the door and he'll be ready to go. It is kind of, I don't know, Alex, I don't know if you disagree with that. I disagree
with the source. I don't care about what that person says at all. Dante DiVincenzo is the best son that the Phoenix Suns have. I mean, you can throw a lot of stuff at the wall. I don't think that he's going to come in for $3 million. He never has. So I don't know.
He's never been asked to, and he's never had a humbling season like he did in 2020.
I just don't, because we haven't seen it before. Like a lot of things we've talked about this offseason, like Chase Edmonds taking over the RB1 role. We haven't seen it yet, so we can't say one way or the other if it's going to be a possibility. I just don't see Fitz coming back for less than like $5 million or $6 million. I just don't.
And
I don't see.
They might pay him that.
Which is a waste of, like, it's. I understand how important Larry Fitzgerald is to the organization. I don't.
Why would it be?
Well, a waste is a very. That's too strong of words because I understand how important Larry Fitzgerald is. Larry Fitzgerald has made $33 million, $44 million, right, over the last 4 years. He probably made double of what the worth was on the field in that time. So the fact that him getting paid more, where you could I don't know. I mean, at this point, obviously, there's not as many free agents as there could have been to help. Steven Nelson would have been nice for $4 million to help bolster the cornerback room. If you're going to give Larry Fitzgerald $5 or $6 million, it's.
They weren't going to do it anyway, though. They weren't just like that. Wasn't a little nest egg for Larry.
Do you think that Larry Fitzgerald should get paid $6 million to come back and play with the Cardinals?
No,
Bo.
No, it's not his market. It's not what his market should yield. But if at this point, if you have the cap space like they do, they've paid everybody. There's nobody right now that they could go get. What's it hurt? I mean, it's just going to sit there.
Yeah, I think that it's a legacy spot. They've made it clear. I mean, what other player would have a spot open for him on a team that continually invests in that position? And yet his spot is open. That tells me that they're going to pay him not $11 million, but it's not going to be the vet minimum. And I also feel like, listen, if Larry had intended to retire and not play football this year, it would have happened already. He would have made a statement to the media, Tim Duncan-like, and would have gone off into the sunset and made it clear, I'm done. I'm focusing on other things. I've had a great career.
Yeah. I don't know about that either. I mean, this might be his way because he said there's not going to be any podium. There's not going to be any tears. This could just be his way of quietly just disappearing.
But it's not quiet. We talk about it all the time until he makes you have to make some kind of a statement.
He might not. I mean, he's cut from a different cloth than most superstars. It's a story that's going to continue throughout Cardinals training camp. And it's probably going to be more amplified as we get closer and closer to the season. Johnny Venerable, read his latest work, revengeofthebirds.com. Listen to the Revenge of the Birds podcast. Big belated happy birthday to your co-host, Blake Murphy. Does great work over there. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, another great week of podcasts. Check out all our YouTube videos, please, on our YouTube channel, Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Check us out on Twitter as well, at Locked On AZ Cards, at Clancy's Corner, at Johnny Venerable, and at BOBRACK. You guys have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Last week without football. Next week, it's on. We'll talk to you guys then. It's Locked On Cardinals.